Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Outside of Arkansas, there was one team that to me was a major winner, and that's North Carolina Tar Heels. And so listen, we've talked a lot about North Carolina over the course of the last couple of weeks, and I'll be real. Listen, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I didn't say the things that I said, and I've been pretty critical of North Carolina. Now, I don't know that I ever really thought they were going to fire Hubert Davis if they missed the NCAA tournament, but I thought it should be a conversation. I thought North Carolina, you shouldn't be missing the NCAA tournament 2 years in a row, 2 out of 3 years, which is what they were on track to do. Well, I bring it up because they have quietly been playing really good basketball and maybe played their best game of the season against Virginia Tech on Tuesday night. Virginia Tech is not good, but when you go on the road in league play and you're a brand like Carolina that brings in huge crowds every single, you get everybody's best shot, right? Just like Kentucky does in the SEC, just like Kansas does in the Big 12. You get everybody's best crowd, everybody's best shot. Well, credit Carolina because they had a nice little ho-hum 32-point win against Virginia Tech. And I'll say this, we just talked about the bubble with Arkansas. I think that North Carolina, for one obvious reason, should get the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the NCAA tournament picture. Let's go ahead and explain. First of all, again, I don't want to overstate and oversell beating a bad Virginia Tech team. Okay, Virginia Tech is not good. And on top of it, they probably should be firing their coach. I saw Jeff Goodman report that Mike Young, their coach, is expected back next year. He's just going to get some more NIL funding. Listen, not the win that we're going to tell our grandkids about. We're not going to be telling our great-grandkids, sitting them on our lap, talking about, hey, 2025 UNC Virginia Tech. Let me tell you about that one. Okay, that's not going to happen. But at the same time, where I have to give North Carolina credit. North Carolina, again, I was very critical early, and you go back to early February. They lose at Clemson. Now, Clemson's not a bad team, but Clemson, when they lost to Clemson, they were 14-11 overall. And what we kept talking about at the time is that when you look at that loss to Clemson, what stood out and what was important was this. The back half of the schedule, outside of the final game of the season against Duke, which is, of course, this weekend, outside of that, here was the problem. You had a bunch of games that really could only hurt you and not help you. You had 6 games in a row against really bad teams, Miami, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, on and on. And what I said at the time was like, look, you may sit there and say, well, it'll be good to hit a soft spot of the schedule. The counter to that is the opposite. If you lose any of those games, it's going to crush your resume, and it's not going to help you to win any of them. And so I said, you basically have to go 6-0 going into Duke to even have a shot. And to North Carolina's credit, they haven't taken a bad loss in 3 weeks, and they are now in position to be in position against Duke. And so we'll see what happens against Duke. But I want to say this. I do believe that as we look at the bubble picture, I believe that North Carolina should be given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the NCAA tournament, and let me explain why. It has nothing to do with branding. It has nothing to do with being a blue blood and send them to Dayton and they'll draw ratings and everybody will want to watch. That's not what this is about. What this is about is that North Carolina put together one of the single toughest out-of-conference resumes that I have ever seen. Now, they didn't get a lot of wins, and I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it and say, oh, my goodness, they should be a 7 seed or 3 seed. They play so hard. No, that's not what this is about. But what it is about is this, is that if you look at Carolina, look at the schedule that they put together. First Friday of the season, they go to Kansas. Now, we didn't know at the time that Kansas was going to stink, but Kansas was the preseason #1 team in the country. They went to Kansas in a true road game. They deserve credit for that. Then, by the way, they fly to Maui. You think, oh, we're going out to Hawaii where Carolina will be in good shape. Round 2, you play some random top 15 team that we don't know if they're good or not. Oh, it was the Auburn Tigers. They're unbelievable. And they smacked you. But guess what? They pretty much smacked everybody all year long. Ask Alabama. Ask Kentucky. Ask Purdue. Ask whoever. They destroy people. So you didn't know when you schedule Maui that Auburn was going to end up as the number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, probably the number 1 overall seed. Oh, by the way, then you'll lose to Auburn. You go to the third place game. You got to play Michigan State. Oh, Michigan State, Tom Izzo, he hasn't done anything in a while. Oh, they're going to win the Big Ten, and they're currently in the top 10 as well. So we're not even talking about through Thanksgiving yet. We haven't even hit Thanksgiving. You've already played Michigan State, Auburn, and on a neutral, and Kansas on the road. Then you come home. You get the SEC Big ACC Challenge. Well, at least it's at home. Who are you going to play? Oh, you played Alabama. Alabama's in position to potentially be a number 1 seed. Then a few weeks later, you get this little thing called the Jumpman Invitational. It's for all the Nike or all the Jumpman schools. And, who are you going to get there? Oh, you got Florida. You got the Florida Gators, okay? And so listen to that schedule. By the way, you also played UCLA, the one quad 1 win that you have. So listen to that schedule, okay? There's only 4 number 1 seeds in an NCAA tournament bracket. There is a chance that North Carolina will have played a minimum of 5 games against them if Florida and Alabama end up with the 3rd and 4th number 1 seeds. Might not happen, but still. Think about that. They played Auburn, who I think is going to be the number 1 overall seed. They played Alabama. They played Florida, all in the out of conference. Now they have 2 games against Duke, maybe a 3rd one, depending on how the ACC tournament bracket plays out. And so to me, if you are going to leave North Carolina out, and by the way, I think a Duke win puts them in, and we're working under the hypothetical that they don't take some terrible loss at the ACC tournament. Like, you lose to Miami. I guess Miami's not even in the ACC tournament this year. I guess, what is it? The bottom 3 don't even go to the ACC tournament. So, you lose to Notre Dame in the ACC tournament. We have to have a different conversation. But the counter to that is, I think if you don't embarrass yourself against Duke, and more importantly, you don't embarrass yourself in the ACC tournament, I do believe Carolina should be in, because I don't believe we should be punishing teams for going out of their way to schedule insane out-of-conference slates, okay? I think North Carolina, and I give Hubert Davis credit, I think he understands the brand that he is in charge of, and I think he understands the responsibility to play big games early in the year, not to duck, not to play a bunch of directional schools, not to not leave Chapel Hill. And so you look at what they did. They could have easily not gone to Maui. They could have played a couple home games, brought in a bunch of bad teams, destroyed them, and added a couple wins to their resume. They could have gotten a break in the ACC SEC Challenge. Maybe they get, Arkansas that was struggling at the time, or LSU's not very good. I mean, there was a million teams they could have got. They got Alabama. And so I don't want to be in the business of punishing teams for scheduling insane out-of-conference slates. Now, listen, I think this becomes a moot conversation in 2 directions, depending on how the next week or so goes. If you beat Duke, I don't see the scenario where you're not in. That would be a great win. As we know, all of the losses would essentially be in quad 1 because, again, you played Florida, Alabama, Auburn, Michigan State, among others, at Kansas out of conference. I think if you beat Duke, it's hard to argue they shouldn't be in. I think even if you lose to Duke, you just can't take that bad loss at the ACC tournament. Again, I've been critical of Hubert Davis. I think a lot of it has been justified. I do believe, listen, I don't generally believe that we should be rewarding mediocrity in the NCAA tournament, but I don't know that playing one of the toughest schedules we've ever seen and not having a ton of success against it is mediocrity. Conversely, I don't know that in ACC play, playing a bunch of bad teams and beating all of them is mediocrity. So North Carolina is certainly in an interesting spot. We will see what happens with them.